I don't know, just stuff started to sink in. People saying things around me about my drinking and me noticing certain behaviors and stuff. It was just, I knew it just couldn't go any farther from that point, which it did. It definitely went farther.
Hello, welcome to Recovery Demystified, a show where we explore our relationship to substances from a radical, non-religious, and empowering lens. Our sobriety is not a purity contract. It is an invitation to become curious about ourselves and find our own unique paths to growth and healing. If you've been questioning the role of alcohol or drugs in your life and haven't found the resources that you need, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hello. Welcome back to Recovery Demystified. My name's Early. I'm so happy to have y'all here today. And I think I'm just going to keep harping in on this one fact from the book Un-Addiction by Dr. Nzenga Harrison. She refers to a study that shows that 75% of people recover from their addictions. And I think if you're here listening to a recovery podcast, that puts you squarely in that category. And if you're having ups and downs, or if you've struggled throughout the process of trying to move past your addiction into recovery, guess what? You're not alone. That happened to me. It happens to a lot of folks. And from my perspective, my vantage point here, I can see off in the distance, you're going to succeed. So I can't wait till you get there, and I can't wait till you come on my podcast and tell me your story. I think you're doing a great job. Today, I have another interview episode for y'all. It is with my friend Katy. We met when I was an EMT student and she was working on the ambulance, and that experience was sort of frustrating in general for me because most people were like, oh, another student, and I would just kind of get treated like a nuisance. But when I met Katy, she was the first person that was nice to me, and she was like, do you want to check the truck with me? Like, she was also one of the only EMTs like doing a very thorough safety check of the truck. Katy was a stand-up motherfucker, and she always was learning and growing and doing a great job. And she was an awesome mentor for me when I first started as an EMT. So thank you, Katy, for that. And her story is really interesting, and I think it's a great listen because she goes through like a lot of things as a child, getting moved around a lot of different places. She had grown up in poverty, and she also saw right in front of her face like all different kinds of really scary addiction to see as a kid. And then her story as an adult is also really interesting and important to bring up because it's not one of those like crash and burn, rock bottom, horrible fuck up stories. She's one of those people that's like having a few beers late in the day and has a habit of that and sees the repercussions of how her behavior changes from having those few beers every single day. And she quits before things get to the crash and burn stage. And I think it's really important to show that that story exists and that story is possible for people, because a lot of times we pour over like, am I an alcoholic? Am I not an alcoholic? And alcoholic is like a made up word that has no definition. And I think the more important thing to ask ourselves is like, is using this substance causing me harm? And do I want to make a change? There's a whole entire spectrum of like alcohol use disorder, mild, moderate, severe, when we're talking like diagnostic criteria, same with substance use disorder. And then there's also like pre-addiction. So that is maybe when you don't even qualify for a mild alcohol use disorder. But I think if we destigmatize talking about the struggles of being in like a mild to moderate alcohol use disorder or substance use disorder, then perhaps we could normalize people seeking help and treatment and say, yes, it's okay to want to quit drinking, even if you don't have that severe alcohol use disorder, right? Like, you don't have to wait till you hit rock bottom. You just don't, you know? So Katy does a great job, like, honing in on the effects that her alcohol use is having in her life. It also has some great value to talk about with quitting smoking cigarettes. So I hope that y'all enjoy this episode. I know you're going to get something out of it. And thank you so much, Katy, for telling your story. And of course, if you get anything out of this podcast, if it's helping you at all, please share it with a friend who you think might need to hear this message, and go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And it would be super helpful to me if you would rate and review. I just might read your review on the next episode. And Recovery Demystified is a 501c3 nonprofit. So if you're interested in supporting this mission, you can find a link to donate in the description. And there's also a link to join our Patreon. So without further ado, here is my interview with Katy. Hello, Katy. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, a little anxious, but I feel good.
It makes sense to be anxious. I think most people are a little bit anxious or worried when they first get in here. And I always, before I start recording, I'm just like, ooh, my heart gets a little fluttery. So I think that makes sense. Will you start by introducing yourself to the audience? Let them know your pronouns and a little bit about yourself.
So my name is Katy. I go by she, her. I'm 30 and recently sober, and I'm also pregnant.
Oh my gosh. How far along are you?
Only 6 weeks, so everything's still super early.
Oh my goodness, you got a little lima bean inside of there or something.
Oh yeah.
Did you pick out a name yet?
Yeah, we actually did. It was pretty easy. We just kind of threw out a name, a male. I think I threw out a male, he threw out a female, and we both said okay.
Word.
So, yeah.
Whatever works.
It'll be James or Jean.
James or Jean. Cute.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, we're here to talk about your story with addiction and recovery. So I'm curious what it was like for you to be a little kid, maybe some of your first encounters with substances, and when things got bad, and then ultimately how you got into recovery. So just start wherever you'd like.
So my past, my parents growing up, I came from like a really poor family, really poor household. And my parents were kind of the rocks of the family, the saving grace. They were, anytime anyone needed help or they were down and out, we had a room at our house for somebody to come stay. We kept a lot of kids from going into CPS. And a lot of it was just problem people and problem children. I remember being pretty isolated. I was a good kid. I just didn't want to make a fuss. So I just kind of played on my own a lot. My cousin Alicia is a couple years older than me. She's the most prominent person that I remember being in and out of the household. My mom's sister was her mother, and she was pretty terrible, just very evil as a child. Some of my first messages of love were, if you don't do this, or you don't give me this, or you don't do that for me, I won't love you anymore. And then, which I got quite a bit of love, understanding, and I felt very comforted and welcoming from my parents. I had really good parents, and I feel very fortunate and lucky for that. They were pretty young when they had me.
Was it your cousin or your aunt that was giving you those messages?
It was my cousin. So I was probably 6 or 7 at the time, and then she was around 8 or 9. We were both really small. So her mom, Karen, was very in and out. She was an international supermodel, like a groupie for Aerosmith, in and out of Dallas, and she was just a party girl. So she didn't really take care of her child. She just kind of dropped her off at our house, and then she just went and lived her life. We moved around a lot. I never went to the same school for more than one school year. I'm just trying to find the next best thing, the next best house. We settled into one house for about a year, and that was the bad house, I guess, where everything kind of went wrong.
How old were you when you moved to that house, and why? Do you remember why you moved around so much?
Well, it was a lot of just family stuff. I was really small, so I hadn't really... we were in a trailer house until I was like 4 or 5. And then from that point on is when the moving just never really stopped. Like once I started school years we got a house in town, and then it just had a bunch of problems, and so we had to move to another house. And then we were renting that one, and my parents didn't want to rent anymore, so they decided to buy a house. And then, so that's the one that we ended up in for about a year. Alicia lived with us for most of that year, and then Karen was just in and out as per usual. At some point, Karen came in and had introduced meth into the family and other hard drugs. She was the light, the life, and just the party of the entire family. Everyone loved her, wanted to be around her, spend time with her, and that's what she was doing at the time. And like I said, just really poor family. Nobody really cares or knows any different. They're just like, yeah, let's party, have a good time, let's have fun. So we had 2 big living rooms with a big archway, and my dad closed off the archway in the living room, in one of the living rooms, and just turned the bigger one into their bedroom. And there was just constantly people in and out after that. Like, I think meth took a hold of my parents very quickly once it was introduced to them. And that's when a lot of the fighting started and arguing. And I just really felt pushed out at that point. I remember several times of getting up and knocking on the door and asking someone to come tuck me in for bed so that I could go to sleep for school, and just sitting there at the door and falling asleep. And no one would ever come out.
Do you remember what it felt like to see your parents in that different state of mind, or to have like the love start to be withdrawn in that way?
Yeah, definitely. The whole house was just cold and empty. And like I said, I've always been pretty introverted and on my own. So it's just something I'd just go to my room, or I'd just go in my happy place, my introverted space where I was comfortable and safe. But there was definitely a lack of love there. And things just started to really snowball and go downhill really quickly. So I didn't have a lot of time to take in stuff. So once the meth was introduced and just that kind of isolation hit, my parents started arguing really bad. Karen was in and out quite a bit, and my mom ended up walking in on her having sex with my dad.
Oh, God.
And so they ended up getting a divorce. And after that, once my dad was out of the situation, he got clean and sober, and he was really depressed. Like, he hated himself. He really loved my mom. And, he was just in a bad place. But he started to realize and see, like, how bad the meth was in our family. And I remember I was at my grandparents, and he came to pick me up for one of our, visit nights. And he took me back to his apartment, and he was like, look, you can't go back with those people. You can't be around them, just for my safety. At the time, I didn't realize that it was dangerous for me. It was my family, and I loved my family. And especially with everything going on with the divorce and stuff, I needed my people around me. I didn't want him to just take me and completely isolate me from everything.
Yeah.
And I ended up calling my grandpa to come pick me up. And after that, probably a month later, my dad just left and he went to Florida.
Do you remember how old you were during this whole time with the divorce and moving around and all that stuff?
Yeah, so I was 9 when my parents got divorced, and that was probably 7, 8 was whenever we lived in the bad house with all the drugs. And then so probably around 9 or 10.
Yeah. I also just want to say it makes sense as a kid to learn to self-isolate and be independent and be in your own happy place when you're not able to get the love from your caregivers. You kind of just learn to do whatever you need to do to survive. So that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. So like I said, my dad, he just went to Florida. He had one of his buddies had moved out there, and he saw an opportunity to just get out and got away from everything. So after the divorce, my mom, she didn't make a lot of money. She didn't have a trade or any sort of special career or anything like that. And she was still really bad on meth. So we moved in with my grandparents. And we had 9 people, and we lived in a single wide trailer house in the trailer park. And me and my cousin slept on a bed in the kitchen. And if we weren't there, it was just whoever my mom was screwing at the time. We would just move in with that guy for a little while. And then we would go back to grandma and grandpa's, whatever. Or we might get a rent house for a little while or an apartment for a little while. And then we just bounced around a lot. It was just the same thing of never really being in one school for a solid school year, bouncing around a lot.
That's really hard for kids too, because it's as soon as you start to get comfortable and start to make friends, then you get ripped away and taken somewhere else, and I guess that would also cause you to continue to become more isolated and forced independence, which sucks when you're a kid because those social connections are really important.
Yeah, for sure. And it's made it harder as an adult with just social bonds and connections as well. There's just always that lingering fear of just being not wanted.
Yeah.
So while all of this is going on, Karen is getting really bad on meth, and now she's using heroin. And she's just black, sunken in eyes. She just looks terrible. She's just walking death, pretty much. And everyone can see her going downhill, but no one really knows how to help her. And she's just out partying like she normally does. She ends up back in the area because she's lost all of her ties and connections at this point, because she's just a drug addict. Like, she's not this fun party girl anymore that she can hang out with all the celebrities all weekend long. She's got to stay in a crappy town to where she can just get her drugs and get high, and that's it.
Yeah.
So she had gone out with a couple of friends that were like mutual friends of the family, and they ended up going to Motel 6, and my uncle was supposed to pick her up the next day, and when he went to go pick her up, he found her in the hotel room dead. She had overdosed on meth and heroin.
Damn.
And so that, like, hit the family really hard. I remember I was sitting out on the porch whenever my grandma got the phone call, and she just screamed, and it was, like, the worst scream I've ever heard in my entire life.
Yeah. Damn. And do you remember how old you were when you heard your grandma get that phone call?
I was 10 or 11, so like I said, everything just snowballed really fast.
Yeah.
Over about 2 to 3 years.
I'm sure it's just like really scary and really sad to see the adults in your life degrading really rapidly like that. And was that your first experience of death?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So once she died, everyone in the family, like, it just hit everyone really hard. And I don't remember who started it. There's a lot of women in my family. One of them had gone to, like, a therapist or psychiatrist who had put them on, like, a ton of pills. I know there was, like, Xanax and, like, several other pills. And it just completely numbed that person out. And everyone else was struggling really bad and didn't know what to do. So it became this whole, well, I have this doctor who gave me this, and it helps me feel better. Like, I can deal, I can cope. So pretty much everyone started doing prescription pills, and we're just straight zombies.
And were these the people that were your family that was on meth before?
Mm-hmm.
Was there sort of like an awakening, like the street drugs are bad?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was just a flip over to prescription pills.
Yeah.
And so over the next couple of years, like, that's pretty much just how it goes. And I was going back and forth visiting my dad in Florida. And I remember coming back home from one summer, and my mom, we were riding in the car, and she was just like a zombie. And it was new to me because I had been gone visiting my dad. And I was like, why are you acting like this? Like, something is wrong with you. Mm-hmm. And she could tell that, like, it had been on her mind, you know what I mean? I think me saying something about it, like, flipped a switch for her. And I remember she just grabbed all the pills and just, like, chunked them out of the window of the car going down the road.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But she got off of them after that. She still takes, like, a really low dose Seroquel at night to sleep, but, like, she would never go back on pills like that again.
Wow.
And then it was a whole battle of everyone else in the family still being on pills and trying to get them off of them. But I just was really starting to see everything. I was starting to get old enough to where I'm understanding how much, like, drugs and addiction have a hold on my family. And so I talked to my dad, and he said that it would be all right if I moved out to Florida with him. So I ended up living with him for one school year. And it was good. Like, that's where a lot of, like, it was a good, like, for me to get out of that environment, but that's where a lot of my personal issues started popping up on just, like, my behavioral problems, just due to everything that happened. I think I just was, like, a mute and just kind of took everything in and just kind of waited it out. And when I was there was when just a lot of it came out. And my dad didn't really know what to do. Like, they were both really young. He didn't know, like, how to discipline me or the right ways to help me through such a hard aspect. I think he was still having a hard time going through it too.
Yeah, and it's like in society, people don't get taught how to parent. Like, we go to public school and we learn, like, bullshit history and fucking trigonometry for some reason, but even though it's like such a large percentage of the population is going to end up being parents, like, no one's educated on how to do that. And when kids are acting bad, like, I mean, discipline is a thing, but also, like, compassion for the fact that, like, suppressed, misunderstood trauma is going to, like, bubble back up in kids as bad behavior a lot of times. Mm-hmm. And, like, maybe kids need age-appropriate therapy and help understanding their emotions and help working through the, like, anger and the difficult emotions that come with having that trauma, so much trauma at such a young age. How did your behavioral problems manifest for you?
Really just acting out. I mean, just regular run-of-the-mill, like pranks and just kind of sneaking out. Just nothing to really like harm myself in a terrible way, but just things that I knew were against the rules and I shouldn't be doing. But so once I ended up having that year in Florida, and I moved back to Texas, my mom had moved to Dallas and she was actually doing really good. She was dating a guy that was really good for her and made decent money. I mean, we had like a 2-story house and they got along pretty well, and she wasn't on any drugs. This was when I really first started seeing kind of some drinking coming into play, which he was an alcoholic. Like, he'd come home and have a few drinks every night, but I didn't. At this point, I'm like, I will never touch meth. I will never touch heroin. I will never do prescription drugs. Like, I have watched this tear my family apart. Mm-hmm. But alcohol to me was just like, I don't know. It's a drink that people have, you know, like it didn't seem like anything for people to drink. And my mom would have a couple drinks here and there, but she's still like, she's an alcoholic now, but she wasn't for a really long time. I honestly think that mine and her drinking heavily started right around the same time. But once I made it back to Texas, it was just kind of, we had the party house, you know, so it was just a bunch of friends coming over and hanging out. We had a pool. And so it was just a big community. All the neighbors came over, block party kind of thing. And they dated for 2 or 3 years. And he ended up just getting to the point to where he had enough of her and just really couldn't stand her. She's a really hard person to be around, very like tough love. And, you know, you're going to do what you're going to do because I say so. Just mean, honestly. And he just had enough and kicked her out, which means I got kicked out too. And so we ended up moving back into my grandma and grandpa's house with like 7 or 8 different people in a trailer house, which was it just sucked, you know, it sucked really bad. But this time it didn't last very long. Like she made good money, got a job pretty quick, and got us into a house, which I was in that house from like halfway through my sophomore year until I graduated. So I was actually in one place for the last few years of school.
Was the rest of your family still on prescription pills or on meth or anything when you went back to your grandparents' house?
No, everyone kind of has their own individual story, but as a whole, I'm extremely proud of every single one of my family members and how far they've come just dealing with the amount of trauma and just bad experiences and where everybody's come from. I feel like everyone has celebrated a win or a victory somehow over, like they overcame what life handed them. They overcame and they prevailed and they came out stronger on top.
Hell yeah. So what happened for you the rest of high school?
So that's when I just started, you know, partying on the weekends. I had an older group of friends, and so it was, you know, just partying on the weekends. I lived in, it was kind of country environment, so we'd, you know, pasture parties and just big bonfires. We'd go hog hunting, riding 4-wheelers, that kind of stuff.
And did you start drinking around that time?
Yeah, and I still just wasn't like a big drinker. I'd have a few drinks, and like once I started feeling a little bit too much of a buzz, I'd just stop because it was just made me feel weird, and I was just there to have fun more than get drunk.
Do you remember the first time you ever drank?
Yeah, I was 13. We were floating the river, and my parents were having some beers, and my mom gave me one, and I took a drink, and like I just dunked it under the water, like filled it up with water, and then pretended to be drinking it, but it was just water. I hated it. It was nasty. And then the first time I really got drunk, I think I was 15, but me and some of my friends were at their house, and we stole their parents' like liquor from their parents' cabinet, and I got alcohol poisoning and threw up everywhere.
Oh my God.
And it was terrible. Like, it was horrible. It was you should not do this again. So drinking for me was just never really it didn't make me feel good. So I really didn't do it.
Did you just kind of do it at the barn parties just to fit in, or?
Yeah, it was just a social thing. As I got older, so my personality is very type A. I'm kind of OCD. I'm very anxious. And I think a lot of that is just being really strong and independent is a lot of just protecting myself with how I grew up and not wanting to be like them. Like, that was my biggest fear, was just being like my family members. And so everything in me was pushing constantly to not ever do anything like any of them. And so as I got older, I started realizing that I can be kind of hard to be around sometimes. Like, I make people nervous, and I can just be very high energy for some people. And so that's when I started noticing that at parties and kickbacks and stuff, when I had a few beers, I seemed more likable. Like, people enjoyed being around me more, enjoyed having conversations with me more. And so that's whenever it became like I looked forward to having a couple beers on the weekends.
Not because of how it made you feel, but because of how other people treated you differently?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. It just like knocked the edge off of my personality is what it felt like.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess it's kind of like a hard place to be in, because we all want like love and social acceptance, and to be using a substance to like gain that acceptance. It's definitely not the first time I've heard that. I feel like that comes up a lot, especially with people with childhood trauma, any amount of like anxiety or social awkwardness or something like that. It's like, we all just fucking want to be accepted, you know? And it sucks that a lot of that comes with, using toxic substances for some reason.
Yeah, definitely. So that's just getting into adulthood. I ended up having several really terrible experiences in relationships. I had like my first relationship. We were drinking at a party, and he went into a room and locked the door with some girl, and like I was locked out and couldn't get into the room, and like I knew he was in there fucking her.
Oh God.
Yeah, and it was like I was just stuck outside, like sitting there waiting. And then like the next boyfriend that I had, one of my friends, she was actually meeting a guy and didn't want to meet up with him alone. Like, she wanted to do a double date kind of thing. And she ended up having just a dinner at her apartment with the four of us. And he started drinking, and he just started getting really like belligerent. And she was looking at me, like giving me the like hand across the throat, like, no, this isn't going to go, like, this isn't flying. And so I kind of like grabbed his stuff and like snuck him kind of out the door, making it seem like we needed to have a private moment. And then I just kind of shut the door and like left him outside. I knew there was going to be no like talking to him at that point.
Yeah.
And so he got really mad, and ended up breaking the door down.
Holy crap.
Yeah, and grabbed me by the throat, punched me across the face. The guy that was there ended up tackling him into the couch and beat the shit out of him. He ended up spending like almost a year in jail. And after that, I had another boyfriend that worked out of town, and then he would come home and had like women's clothes in his bag and stuff. And I just really felt like I wasn't good enough with anyone that I was with. And I was really curious about myself. You know, I knew that I had gone through a lot and I had come really far. And one of my friends, like, I think that I had said some sort of, it was like a white lie. It wasn't even anything like a serious or hardcore lie, but it hurt their feelings. And something about that really bothered me on a really deep level of like, why would I do that? Why would I say that?
Yeah.
And so I really just started analyzing my own behaviors and just who I was. And I noticed that there was a lot that I just didn't know about myself. And at that point, I was 20, and I ended up just going completely celibate and just isolating pretty intensely. I had my own apartment, and I just started questioning everything about the world. And I read a lot. I studied like probably 15, 20 different religions and all different sorts of emotions and the mind and just life in general.
Wow. Was substance use a part of your life at all during that time?
No.
No.
No, I didn't. I did, like, I would occasionally smoke weed, but I would have a sativa, and I just have like a bowl, and I would take like one hit when I needed to go like start cleaning the house or something, and just to like get a little, turn some music on, like get in a little different headspace where I wasn't overthinking while I was trying to do a simple task.
Yeah. Do you feel like this inner isolation that you'd put yourself into, do you feel like it was a healthy place of self-growth, or do you feel like it was taking it like too far? What was the, when you look at it from now, from your perspective now, what do you see in yourself?
When I think back and when I look back on it, I miss it really bad. I really loved the whole journey, the whole experience, and I feel like I reached a fully enlightened state of being. Like, I felt completely at peace and calm, just living in the moment. And everything, like, I just allowed the universe to come to me. So over that 2 years, like, there was certain periods of time to where, like, I would see my friends or my family. You know, I didn't force myself to be completely isolated. If there was someone, like, if everything just lined up just right in the universe, like, it just felt right to go hang out with this person, like, I would just go hang out with them, and it was usually a really amazing experience. And so I just really loved it, honestly. I learned a lot about myself, and I stripped away, like, a lot of who I was. Probably learning to observe my own thoughts and behaviors was the hardest part of it, because your mind can just turn into, like, this big monster. It's so hard to keep quiet and just be. And I don't know, I just felt like it was a really, really amazing journey, a really awesome part of my life. And it's something I look back on and miss a lot. And I probably spent a good 2 years of just trying to get back there before realizing that I'm a different person now. This is a different period of time in my life. It's not going to be the same, you know, for me to get back to a healthy place. It's going to be a whole different journey.
Yeah, it's very, very, I'm intrigued. I'm interested. Yeah, it's like sounds like you made one mistake that didn't align with your values, and that was like the lie to your friend, and having that turn into like 2 years of study and self-reflection, and that it felt really good and that you learned about yourself. Like, that's fucking really cool, actually. Especially at such a young age, you know what I mean? Like, I'm intrigued. I think that's cool.
Yeah, and I do that. I work in extremes. Like, I always go above and beyond with everything. I don't really know how to just kind of chill do something. It's like I have to way go overboard. And that's pretty much what that was just I need to figure out who I am, just screw everything, and that is my number one priority, you know. So once I entered that state of pure enlightenment, I would say I was there. I can't really pick a specific day, like whenever it happened, but I would say anywhere from 3 to 6 months. Also, like, the first big signs of addiction for me, of whenever I first became addicted to something, was smoking cigarettes. I forgot to mention that, just because it's cigarettes, and that's how it is. The whole culture behind it is just so overlooked. Mm-hmm. I smoked my first cigarette when I was 11, and I was addicted from that moment on. Like, I needed to smoke. I remember, I don't know if it was just my kid brain exaggerating, but I swear our entire front yard was made of cigarette butts. And I just go and, like, pick out whichever ones. And every night before bed, I would smoke cigarettes. Our parents weren't home. We got off the bus. We had a few hours, and they smoked in the house. And so we'd just get our cigarette butts and sit on the couch and just, like, smoke. And, I mean, it was just terrible. Which I have quit smoking recently as well, or it's been about 3 months. But so that's probably the biggest where my full-blown addiction went, you know.
Did you smoke cigarettes during your period of enlightenment?
I quit smoking cigarettes during my period of enlightenment for about a month. And it was one of those things where I was just like, I don't need this, you know, and I just let it go. But I felt pretty fully enlightened for 3 to 6 months, and then ended up quitting smoking cigarettes. And then something happened to where I ended up having a weird reconnection with one of my old friends, and she had broken up with her boyfriend and was kind of going through it. And so I was there for her. But it kind of got me back into that group of friends, and I hadn't really hung out with them in a while. And so I ended up going either over to her house or, like, a couple of my other friends from that group's house. And he started coming around, and me and him ended up actually having really good energy. And so we hung out a couple of times. And the first couple of times we hung out, we had a couple of beers, which I was kind of on an IPA thing and just, like, trying different flavors of stuff. It wasn't like drinking, you know, it was more of just, I'm going to try this flavor of something. And we ended up in a relationship for 2 years, and pretty much it never stopped. Like, whenever we hung out, we would, in the evenings, like, we'd eat or cook or do whatever our adventure was. And then in the evenings, we'd have a few beers, and And that was it. Like, that's how we did it every time we hung out. And then we moved in together. And so it was us living together and going about our day and then coming home and having a couple beers to relax. And it just turned like into a full-blown addiction, really.
And it was just a few every time for both of you, or did it ever like increase?
Sometimes on the weekends, or like if we were on vacation or something, we would drink a lot more. And that's where, just over the last few months, like looking back on the relationship in general, there's a lot to it that alcohol had a lot to do with that I didn't realize like how bad it was at the time. That I just chalked it up to something else, like him making mistakes or me being in a transition of who I am. But I completely, like, all of the hard work that I did, I felt like in the self-discovery phase just went out the window, like just pouring toxins into my body all the time. I mean, it just erased every bit of it. And then I just started turning into a really just ugly person. You know, I got to a point where I just didn't know who I was. And I thought it was the relationship. Like, I had to get out of the relationship.
But you think, looking back, that it also had to do with drinking every day? Oh,
absolutely. Because leaving the relationship and then moving up here to Arkansas didn't change anything about how I felt. You know, I still felt awful. I still felt lost, like I didn't know who I was. And nothing I tried made anything better. And that's because I was still drinking. So it's taken me a really long time to just accept how bad it was. But once I accepted it, then it just became a battle of what do I do about it? You know, how do I fix it?
Will you talk a little bit more about what was bad?
Just with the drinking.
Yeah, or like what changed in you? Like what was bad?
So I turned into just a really ugly and mean person. So just saying hurtful things, and I'm trying to think of a specific example. I think that there was a lot of trauma that would come out that I didn't realize was just hidden somewhere, you know. So there was like kind of a lot of the major archetypes. Like I would fall into like a victim a lot. Like I felt like a victim, and like I was owed, like especially with the previous relationships that I was in, I brought a lot of that like baggage and trauma into the one that I was in at the time. And so I think there was little tiny things that would be done and trigger these like fight or flight responses in me and emotional responses of just like attack. You know, like I felt like I was in danger. So it was just like a lot of belittling. There was a lot of belittling and just like putting someone down, like just making them feel bad. Just because I felt so terrible and so bad inside that like I wanted someone to like understand where I was at.
Yeah. Do you know if at the time you felt justified in your actions, or did you feel like ashamed of your actions? Do you know how you felt about yourself, like after you would have these fight or flight responses that triggered the response to be insulting and belittling?
It would depend on what phase of drinking I was in. I mean, kind of early in the beginning, like I'm sure there was some justification. Or like a moment to where like I felt like they deserved it, you know what I mean? And then there's certain areas to where like the next day I'd just feel completely ashamed, you know, to where it's like I can't believe I would say something like that. Like I love this person, they're really close to me, like someone that I don't ever want to leave my side, you know, like I would never want to push this person away. And I could see a lot of my mom coming out whenever I would drink, a lot of that tough love. I don't know, just like for example, she was just telling me something and it kind of tinged one of these moments for me, because it's like she is still drinking, so she is doing things that it's a lot more clear now that I'm not drinking, that number one, where she's at, and then also like how bad it was when I was doing it too.
Yeah.
But my stepdad had to have his leg amputated.
Goodness.
Yeah. And whenever they came home, he was in a wheelchair, and like he had to have her help assist him to get from the wheelchair over to the couch or wherever he was going. And she was having a hard time like helping him up. And she just like let him fall and then yelled at him and telling him that it was his fault. You know, yeah, and just like, you have to get up, you have to walk. And so, of course, his rehab turned around really fast and he like walked really quick, but it's like, it's just this mean, like, just I mean, and I don't think that I ever got to that point. Like, I never got physically, like, would harm someone, but I definitely hurt feelings. You know, I definitely belittled and was like, you have done nothing with your life. Like, what you say you're going to do this, you say you're going to do that, and you do nothing, you know? And so it's like, I do have that streak. It's not quite as mean as hers, but like, it's along those lines.
It's definitely very eye-opening when we see ourselves acting like our parents in the ways that have hurt us. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did you act out in these ways exclusively when you were drinking, or was it just kind of like a personality change that surrounded the drinking?
So it usually centered around like something that really hurt my feelings deep down and that I was just incapable of letting go of. Just someone hurting me on a level that like I just can't, like, it's hard for me to look past it when it's really just a situation that I should probably not be around that person anymore just because of the circumstances. But something I'm struggling with now is like, how do you keep people around? You know, when most people treat you bad, you know, it's like you have to put up with a certain degree of someone treating you bad, because most of the time, like, people are not trying to hurt you. You know, they're really not. They're just trying to take care of themselves, and they end up hurting you in the process.
Yeah, and I mean, I know they say the road to hell is paved with good intentions, which I don't know if I believe that, but it's like, what I think with like interpersonal relationships is like, we have to know our own limits within ourselves, but also the person's intentions are important, because no one's perfect, and interpersonal conflict and harm happens in every relationship, like, to a certain extent. And if the person is like, I'm sorry, and taking active steps to like show they're working on themselves and trying to improve and become better, to me that means the world, you know? So yes, there's always interpersonal conflict, but like, do we have to put up with like being abused? No, you know? And also the person's like capacity to learn and grow is just really, really important.
Right, for sure. And I think that a lot of so I would have these feelings of just, you know, the pain, the hurt, they're saying they're going to do all these things, not seeing any changes, and then knowing that I should probably leave that situation or decide to give them time and give them a chance. But instead, I would start drinking, and then all of those feelings of like pain and hurt would bubble up, and then it would become this, well, you know, you did this to me, you did that to me, like, you're an awful person because you did this or you did that, you know. And it was just this constant reminder, like, telling them what they did in like their worst moment, you know what I mean? Which is not something that anyone ever wants to have to live over and over and over again.
Right. And especially when it's in response to your own like inability to like regulate your own emotional state, which is another frustration I have with like society and schooling and learning in general, is like, why are children and adults not taught what their emotions are called, how they feel, and how to regulate them in a healthy way? Because it just ends up then we're in these like fucked up relationships, and you like have a big scary feeling, and you've never learned what to do with the big scary feeling, except the overarching message from society is like, drink beer and feel good or whatever, when that's not fucking true either. So yeah, it's like, if we could all like be able to learn emotional tolerance skills, it would set us up for like a lot less pain and conflict as well.
Yeah. And so that's something from my like previous learnings, was to really get in tune with your intuition and who you are on a deeper level, and quiet the mind and all of the thoughts, and just being able to observe an emotion, you know, sitting there feeling an emotion and saying, okay, this is anger, you know, this is pain, and just identifying it and letting it be just that. You know, letting it just be an emotion. Like, there's a lot of emotions that are in place for your survival to actually make you live, you know? And then there's some emotions that are just out of control, you know? And it's a process. It's hard It's a struggle to just step out of your mind and your past and your traumas and just try and be present in the moment, which would just help a lot of people, I think, in general.
Totally. At what point did you start to question the use of alcohol in your life?
So I started to notice that that sort of behavior in the relationship that was, I felt hurt by this person, and then drinking, and it was making me feel like mean, and which, like, he probably got the worst of it. You know what I mean? Like, I understood there was a point to where I would have too many, or, you know, like there was a point to where I wanted to cut myself off from drinking. Like, I knew that there was a place that I could get to that was not nice, that I didn't like going. And so that's where I started to kind of like, all right, we're not going to go there, you know. And I had one of my friends come and visit from Texas that lived in Arkansas. And I don't remember like what exactly we argued about. It wasn't the topic itself, and the conversation that we had was not like a terrible conversation, but pretty much the whole time that he was visiting, I was just being very short, and I needed alcohol at this point. So it was like during the day when we were doing something else, it was like I just wanted to hurry up and get it done so that we could get to the point to where we're relaxing and having a couple beers. So I was just very like short and direct, and kind of just probably not a nice person to be around, you know. Mm-hmm. And he ended up just leaving in the middle of the night one night and driving all the way back to Texas. And so I called him and I was like, hey, what's going on? Like, what happened? And he said, well, I don't know. I really didn't like the conversation that we had, and I just didn't want to be around you anymore.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so from that point, I was like, all right, this has got to stop. That's just enough. You know, enough is enough.
Yeah, it's amazing how much we start drinking to create a social connection with other people, and then the reality of most people's behavior while drinking is that it pushes people away.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And my dad started mentioning things like, he lives on the same property with me, but he would notice, you know, like I'd come home and have some beer, I'd just be sitting out on the porch having beers, like just drinking by myself. And so he'd make comments like, hey, you shouldn't be sitting here drinking by yourself. Like, this is not normal. This is not good. Like, people don't do this, you know? And I was like, yeah, that's fine. Like, just, you know, writing it off like nothing. And I don't know, just stuff started to sink in, you know, people saying things around me about my drinking and me noticing certain behaviors and stuff. It was just, I knew it just couldn't go any farther from that point, which it did. It definitely went farther from that point.
Went farther.
Yeah.
Was there like attempts to quit or moderate at that time?
Yeah, it was just trying to moderate and cut back. And I ended up going out one night with a guy that I was talking to, and we went up to Eureka, and we weren't even going to drink, and we ended up like getting a pretty good buzz. And on our way back from Eureka, I ended up like taking a curve too sharp, and I hit a guardrail and totaled my car.
Oh shit.
Yeah. So my dad came and picked me up and took me and him back to the house. Luckily, like I didn't get in trouble or anything like that, and nobody got seriously hurt. But that was it. That was a reality check, and I can't believe it had to get to that point. You know, it was, the next step was going to be like someone seriously getting injured or something. Like, I had a really bad feeling that something extremely terrible was going to happen if I kept going.
Yeah. You think that feeling was your intuition?
Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure. I already felt it before. Like, every opportunity that I ended up taking to drink, like, I just had serious, like, super high anxiety about, like, my intuition was already telling me something bad was going to happen. And then there was a few different things that happened that it wasn't good, you know, but it wasn't that bad. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I just kept ignoring it and just kept drinking. And it was just really sad to, like, put a rule, you know, and set my foot down and say, I'm absolutely not drinking on this occasion. And then just end up doing it anyways. You know, like, I was just really struggling. I was really at a hard place.
So even after crashing the car, you were trying to quit, and then you still would?
No, so that was like before the car crash. Mm-hmm. And like I said, there was some attempts to try and cut back. And then there was the me putting my foot down and that was like that night when we went out there, we were not supposed to drink. Like, I put my foot down. I was like, we're not drinking. And then what do you know? We ended up drinking. And so it was like, there was a few instances like that to where it just I should have just put my foot down even harder and been like, all right, woman, like, you can't, like, you literally cannot put this toxin in your body anymore. And, so at that point, I ended up cutting back. I did really good. I probably drank like a quarter to a third of the month. I think it equaled like 3 or 4 days a month. I mean, it wasn't anything too bad. But then I noticed it very quickly that I would buy some beers and then I would have some left over. And so that would like make another day. And then it wouldn't be quite enough to do anything with. So I would get more. And then, which I think that I might have done that once, maybe even twice. But it was pretty quick. I was like, nope, sorry.
Yeah, see where this is going. Yeah.
Yeah. And once I hit that point, I just kind of had the realization that like there is no cutting back. Like I have to quit. It's okay to have a drink every once in a while. And I felt really good in general, just mentally, emotionally, like better bonds with people, better human interactions. And I was just kind of, at that point, it was more like I had a really bad day and I would come home and have a couple drinks like by myself. It wasn't a social thing anymore. Like I wasn't allowing it to have an effect on my social interactions with people. I didn't want that to be like a crutch or an excuse or a reason. So I ended up just deciding I had to quit drinking entirely. And at the time, I was also possibly could be pregnant. And I was really happy about it. Like I was really looking forward to it. Just with where I was at, I had been doing good cutting back. I wanted to quit cold turkey. I really wanted to quit smoking cigarettes. And I was surrounded by people who were partying and drinking. Like that's what I was surrounded by. Like I wasn't surrounded by sober people who were taking care of themselves. And so I ended up not being pregnant. And that hit me really hard. Because there was a bunch of stuff planned coming up that was going to be pretty much centered around drugs and alcohol. And I just didn't want to do them. Like, I didn't want to be in that environment anymore. I didn't want that to be my story. I didn't want that to be my life anymore. And so whenever I wasn't pregnant, it was like the person that I was with, they're like, well, you're not pregnant, so I guess that means we get to have like one last hurrah, like one last big party, you know? And it was like the whole time we're partying, I was just so like just sad, you know, just really sad that that's where I was. And after we got back from the last trip, it was like I was just done with everything. Quit drinking, quit smoking. And it's like I've had some really hard days. I've had really good days, you know, definitely more good days than bad days.
When you decided it was the moment to stop, how did you feel at that juncture? Were you like, did you feel like it was a punishment? Were you excited? Did you feel like you're going to be missing out on something? Like, what were your thoughts when you're like, this is it, this is the moment?
So whenever I finally quit, I'd say probably 6 months leading up to that moment, I was growing this, like the best way I can describe it is as like my form, like my body, my form, but like slightly larger and a little bit more elevated, like almost like a shadow around me that I had just been kind of growing. And whenever I finally decided that I was going to quit and be sober and start the next chapter of my life, I felt like I was actually stepping into that elevated version of myself.
Wow.
Like, it just felt very, like, empowering and also very humbling just to not feel stuck anymore and not feel like I have to do anything for anybody else anymore, that I just need to take care of myself. And so, yeah, it just felt really good to move into this next chapter, into this next version of myself, really.
Very cool. How did you survive like the detox phase and the first month and stuff like that? Like, did you have cravings? Was there opportunities that came up where you could drink or smoke that you had to like work through? What kind of stuff did you do to survive the first month?
So probably like 2 weeks after I quit, was probably the worst circumstance that I could have been presented with, which is holidays with my family. So that's everyone sitting on the porch, smoking cigarettes. I mean, and it's a big gathering, so there's more people drinking than there normally would be. And my family, there's a great divide. So half the people are drinking, half the people are smoking. And I'm trying to just be sober without any substances. So there's obviously the smoking cigarettes, and then smoking weed is what I'm talking about. So like there's like a group of people all huddled together, like with a few joints going, and then there's like other crazy people drinking and being loud and dancing to music and stuff. So it's just kind of, everyone's got their thing, you know? And so right after I quit, I was making a trip down to my mom's for a family get together. And I was just so nervous and scared, and it's the childhood feelings of being left out and being isolated because I'm trying to like better myself, you know? So it was really hard. It was, but my mom, like, even though she was drunk sometimes and sober sometimes, like, she pulled me to the side and just tear up and like tell me how proud she was of me and like how much she can tell I'm growing. So, I don't know, she's always been a really good cheerleader, even though she's messed up. And she really bumped me up, you know, even though she made it seem like you are doing so much better than all of us can even imagine, you know, so.
That sounds like really important stuff, like really important things to hear at that exact time, because it sounds like you were walking into an experience where you were afraid of the rejection or the abandonment, and instead you got a cheerleader.
Yep.
Yeah,
for sure.
What other kind of things did you do to survive through that very beginning period?
So I started meditating a lot, stretching, just working out. I actually got a personal trainer and started working out pretty regularly, doing bodybuilding, which is like a whole area of working out I've never experienced. And it was really just something to distract me. I have really no desires to be like a huge bodybuilder or anything like that. But
come on.
But I think challenging my body was something that I really needed at the time, because number one, I was exhausted. These workouts were like an hour to 2 hours long, and at night, like I was just tired. I really just wanted to sit down and like meditate, read a book, and go to bed. So that helped a lot. And then I also did some L-theanine, which is just like a supplement. I don't know. I think it was more of like a placebo thing, that I'm like taking something that's supposed to help me feel more relaxed than like me actually telling a difference of how I felt.
A win's a win.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And then also, like, I'm a very open book, and I like to tell people about my story, and I like to tell people about where I'm at in my life and what I'm going through. I have no filter, like, most of the time. And honestly, just kind of going back to that safe place and kind of shutting a lot of my deeper feelings and thoughts off, and just kind of keeping them to myself, and just kind of turning inward a little bit more, and journaling a lot was really helpful. Still is really helpful. I feel like I'm still in like a recovery phase right now, to where I'm learning different methods to take care of myself.
Yeah, how long has it been since you quit?
It's been mid-October. So October 18th was my original date, and then it was, I think, 3 days after.
Or like coming up on 3 months?
20th,
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
Have you had any hairy situations where you've had like a craving, or someone's like offered you a drink and you had to have a hard time turning it down?
So offering a drink, or I think that quitting smoking cigarettes helped a lot, because that was one of my biggest demons. One of my biggest challenges was to quit smoking cigarettes. Like, that was the biggest monster just looming over me. Like, it controlled every aspect of my life. Like when I'm going to go to the bathroom, and when I'm going to do the laundry, and when I'm going to, like, I planned my entire day around cigarette breaks. And so quitting smoking made quitting drinking feel easier. And the methods that I used to quit smoking, I could apply a lot to drinking and just any addictive behaviors, really. And so a lot of those things were like a craving, the feeling of a craving. I would imagine that is the feeling of my addiction dying. So my addiction is this big monster and I am killing it. And it's screaming at me, and that's the craving, you know? And so I'm like, no, you bad monster. Like, you will not win.
Wait, did you read Ellen Carr? Is that where you got it from?
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, that one was the book was really good and really helpful for just addiction in general, I'd say. But obviously the quitting smoking part, that was a big one for me, for sure.
Yeah, I love Alan Carr. I mean, it's like sort of gimmicky or whatever, but like, what isn't sort of gimmicky? But yeah, when I read the book about quitting drinking. I mean, it's all the same method. They just changed the words in each book to be like about smoking cigarettes or about smoking weed or about drinking or about whatever addictive behavior you're trying to switch out. But yeah, I remember reading Alan Carr and being like, fuck yeah, I'm the one in charge here. And yeah, when you get a craving, you're like watching a little monster that's been bothering you this whole time die, and you're like, so what? Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, the book helped a lot just with addiction in general. I still had hard moments trying to figure out how to relax without drinking or without some sort of substance. Like, I'm going to take a day off and I'm not going to do all these chores and tasks because I need a day to rest my mind. That just became really hard to do without any substances. I'm actually starting to realize now that my job has more to do with that than my addiction does. I have just a really hard medical job where I help people all day long, and I have a lot of responsibility just over people's lives in general, which is really heavy. And when you live in such a adrenaline-fueled, like kind of high-paced and just very heavy environment, whenever you try and sit down and relax, like, it feels foreign. It doesn't feel comfortable for you. It feels wrong. Like, it makes you feel like guilty, or it makes you feel super anxious because you should be doing something with yourself instead of just sitting there.
Yeah, that's my exact experience after I quit working on the ambulance, was that, and also because the place that I was working at required us to have mandatory overtime, so I really got stuck in this like overdrive of work. And then when I quit that place, and I was like super relieved in theory that I could like have free time and like engage with my interests and see my friends again. But I felt super uncomfortable with trying to figure out how to relax. And it became my life goal to learn how to figure out how to relax. And I think that, I mean, whatever, just working too much or being in like a high-paced adrenaline-fueled job, or like people also have workaholism too. Like, that's an addiction in itself. So I'm glad we're putting it out there and like normalizing it, that it's very common to be so overworked that you're uncomfortable when you're trying to relax. But the good news is, for me, after like kind of a long time, like a year, I did figure out how to relax, and now I feel good relaxing, which is not to say that it would take everyone a year, but it's possible to like be comfortable relaxing. So
yeah, I think having the baby helps a lot, because it's like I can just use the baby a lot now, you know, like the baby needs rest, the baby needs a snack, like the baby needs this is all the things the baby needs, but it's really just me taking care of myself, like, and it's something that I just want to continue, you know, after the pregnancy. I think I'm going to learn a lot throughout this pregnancy of just taking care of my body in general, and not being so hard on myself mentally and physically, and just constantly pushing so hard.
Maybe Katy is the baby too.
Yep.
The baby needs rest.
Yep.
All right. Yeah. Have you gotten into like therapy or any like self-help resources? It sounds like you read Alan Carr. Is there any other things that you've been doing to like work on your healing path?
Yeah. So I'm reading another book right now. It's called Too Much, and it's about high functioning codependency, which is, it kind of fits the bill for me. I'm still pretty early on in it, so I don't know like how helpful it's going to be or how much merit there is to it. The whole beginning of the book is just kind of helping you see why you do things a certain way. So it's been really eye-opening to just my past and my trauma and why I do a lot of the things that I do. So it seems pretty promising so far. And that's just that whole like feeling hurt by someone and this like overplay of emotions is the codependency. Like I'm super high functioning, super independent person who like forges this pathway and just like, you know, like I just push ahead and I always want to come out on top. That kind of behavior plus needing, you know, that codependency, like needing like I do all of that for validation. You know what I mean? Like that's what, if I don't keep pushing myself and keep trying and doing and being the best version of myself all the time, then like I don't feel fulfilled. I don't feel validated. I don't feel like I'm doing the best that I can, but like you just can't do that forever. You know, you just burn yourself out and run yourself into the ground and end up in situations to where your relationships are struggling, you know?
Yeah, and in the end, like your value of yourself should come from within, you know? Like
Absolutely, yeah.
We're social species and we're all connected to each other, but relying on other people for approval is kind of a dead end road because as soon as you start loving yourself, you don't need that anymore, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And then therapy. So whenever I had moved back in with my mom in Dallas, she put me in counseling. And that was the best thing ever. I have always been really big on the counseling and journaling. And I picked up meditating, obviously, when I did like my spiritual exploration thing. So those have all been really big, like 3 things that are really important to me to try and do every day if I can, or not the counseling, but journaling and meditating are both really important. I did use a therapist on BetterHelp. And she was pretty good. I just didn't like the video calling. It just seemed kind of grainy, and sometimes like it would mess up the conversation because it would get kind of glitchy and we were on like a really important aspect of, you know, some growth or journey or something, and she couldn't hear me or I couldn't hear her or vice versa. And we're like, wait, what? You know? So I'm going to do a in-person therapy, which I actually just have my first consult at Day by Day on Monday. So I'm pretty excited about that because I need it.
Hell yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's important when we have all of that childhood trauma and these big emotional reactions and we've buried it in an addiction to try to, you know, talk through it with someone that's got the training in it and get to the root of it and try to heal. So super cool that you're starting to go on that journey.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. And even though like there was this big hard part with the dark cloud and stuff, I feel like I'm on the other side of that hump now. I feel like I feel very strong. I don't feel like anyone or anything or any situation could make me go back to drinking or go back to smoking. And I mean like bad stuff. Like I think something really, really, really bad, terrible could happen and I would not resort to either of those things. Like I feel strong enough at this point that I'm not going back. It's just not worth it for me.
What do you do when you're uncomfortable now?
So if I get a craving, like I said, it's just been when I do a bad craving or I need to relax or I'm just trying to praise myself. You know, it's just one day at a time, one moment at a time. Like even though this moment is hard, just wait a minute, you know, just meditate, just do a little stretch, just do something else and take a few deep breaths and then come back to another moment and like it will pass. You know, that hard part will pass and, you know, time heals. So it's like just the biggest thing I've been telling myself probably the last month has just been one day at a time. Like it doesn't have to be this whole big picture of this big end goal or like this race or somewhere you're trying to get. You know, it's all about like every single day and every step and every choice that you make that's really makes a difference as to how your journey is going to go.
Yeah, and it sounds like when you had your spiritual awakening, a lot of it was like letting go of things and just like being present in the moment and maybe reconnecting back with that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. For sure. Yeah.
Was there anything that you wanted to get to that we didn't talk about yet?
I don't think so.
Cool. Well, I usually end with 2 questions, and one is, what do you think people don't understand about addiction?
I think that is kind of something I actually wanted to touch on. So I have had someone close to me in my life that I have expressed how important it is for me to not be addicted to substances. And they have very much just downplayed that it even exists. You know, just me coming home and having a couple of beers at night, they think it's just that. You know, they're like, well, is that an addiction? Are you really addicted to anything? And so I think that it's really important that everyone has their own perception of what they feel is okay and not okay in their own mind, and just doing what feels right to them. It's not about how someone else views a situation. Like, if you feel like it's not healthy for you and you don't feel okay, like, seek help. You know, find someone who does agree with you. Find someone who, like, can get on a level with you. You know, don't let people put you down whenever you're trying to better yourself.
Totally. And, like, you don't have to wait until you're living under the bridge or whatever to address your addiction. Like, if you are having a few beers a night and it's not going well for you, it's not like, you don't have to wait for it to become, like, fucking horrifying. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Yeah. If it's not serving you to have a few beers at night and you know that, it's chill. Like, cut it out, you know?
Yep. It's honestly going to be a lot easier to do something about it at that point, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you don't want to call it an addiction, just call it a fucking problem, you know? Like, or whatever. But yeah, it's up to you to define within yourself, like, what's serving you and what's not serving you in your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you could talk to someone who's in the darkest days of their addiction, what would you say to them?
Just moment by moment, day by day, just one day at a time. Just take care of yourself, you know, don't hurt yourself so much. Don't be so hard on yourself, and give yourself some grace, and take a deep breath and just get through this moment and the next moment and the next moment. And soon enough, like, you'll be down the road just a little ways and feel extremely proud of how far you've come, even if it was just 10 minutes ago. You know, you're in a place that's not so perfect right now, but everyone's had their dark days, and we all, you know, come out somewhere that we have learned, and we grow when we all have our own experiences. And just be proud of who you are, and trust yourself.
Yeah, that's really great advice. Thanks for sharing that. I super appreciate your time. Thank you for talking to me today.
Yeah, of course.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Recovery Demystified. If you like what you heard, share it with a friend, or rate and review us so we can reach a larger audience. Recovery Demystified is produced and edited by me, Early Brunner. Stevie Pettit made our logo. Our beautiful theme music is by Logan Bragg, and our social media manager is Kaylee Bausch. We are entirely supported by your generous donations as a 501c3 nonprofit. You can find a link to donate in the description. May you be happy and free, dear listener.